Hi, welcome to the talk on our paper, which is titled Strong Anonymity is Not Enough, Introducing Fault Tolerance to Planet-Scale Anonymous Communication Systems. And this is work done by Florian Schorsch and myself, I'm Lennart. When we consider anonymous communication, we're talking about keeping communication private in terms of two pieces of data. The first of them obviously is the content. We want to keep the content of the conversation confidential, and this is usually achieved by means of encryption. However, metadata, so data such as the participants of the communication, when it starts, when it ends, for how long it goes on, with which kind of pattern, this is usually called metadata. And this is just as important and just as sensitive as the actual content of the conversation, and thus should also be kept private. We have made tremendous progress over the recent years to give users the means to communicate with content being confidential. So by now, more than 2 billion users use end-to-end encrypted messengers, which is great. However, anonymous communication systems, or ACS, that are able to protect the mentioned metadata for us in the context of messaging, those are not yet really available, more like a work in progress. And the point that we are making in this paper is that one of the roadblocks of these ACS becoming available and usable for billions of users is that they are not fault tolerant enough. So why does fault tolerance matter? What do we mean with the risks of unavailability for ACS users? So consider that users have an expectation of how the service performs that is informed by prior usage and general knowledge about how a service works, right? And ACS are typically large distributed systems, and as all of these kinds of systems, they inevitably will encounter failures. Something will go wrong, such as a process will crash or be slow, messages will get lost or unusably delayed, and further things can happen. And this can lead to a situation where the service is unable to route their users' messages, at which point the users have two choices. First, they can wait until hopefully eventually the service recovers. However, until then, they will not have service, right? They cannot relay their messages. Or the alternative is that they could switch to less private messengers and probably send their messages, but will sacrifice some part of their privacy, which is also not ideal and in some cases maybe devastating. So the point that our paper is trying to make is that we show the negative impact of a lack of fault tolerance in ACS on end-user perceived performance, and thus the result of that, right? And also the effectiveness of quite simple fault tolerance measures in a proof of concept ACS that we put together for this work. So this proof of concept ACS is called FTMix for fault tolerant mixnet, mixnets being one way for how to achieve anonymous communication. And it really is like a pretty basic mixnet equipped with simple fault tolerance measures. And we do this we call this redundancy in space and time. So redundancy we use to achieve fault tolerance in space and time because of how the following mitigations are working, right? So they work in terms of space and in terms of protocol rounds, right? So regarding slow and failed processes, we propose to use multiple independent cascades to route the messages through. Regarding delayed and lost messages, we propose to send these messages to all of these independent cascades each time and also in the subsequent round. So quite a lot of additional send operations. And regarding message corruption, we would have liked to get to the point where we could employ forward error correction algorithms because we think they are very promising, but we have to leave this as future work. We pitch our proposed proof of concept mixnet against two other systems, and we selected these comparison systems based on them being state-of-the-art representatives of their respective approach, and that their source code was available so that we could actually deploy the systems. So the first system that we picked is called Vuvuzela. It was published by Vandenhoff et al. In 2015, and it is a single cascade mixnet, so also a mixnet basis, but only with a single cascade and quite a few other design choices than our mixnet. And this, as any other kind of strongly anonymous mixnet system, typically incurs high end-to-end latencies. The other system being Pang, published by Angel and Seti in 2016, It is a single-server computational private information retrieval, or CPIR, system. This is another foundation or basic approach for how to achieve anonymous communication. And this comes with lowish end-to-end latencies, but quite the high compute and bandwidth requirement. We pitch these systems against each other, we evaluate them in a planet-scale public cloud ACS testbed that we develop, with a goal of obtaining real-world measurements so that we don't rely exclusively on simulations or emulations. And we published the source code of this public cloud testbed on GitHub. And in our evaluation, we deployed across 17 regions, across 4 continents of 1 major public cloud provider. The trick here is that we subject the systems to various failure settings. So we propose 3 settings here. First of all, a baseline setting that does not experience any impediments, but already captures real-world latencies due to how widely deployed the system is, right, across 4 continents. The second scenario injects high delay and a moderate amount of, lowish amount of message loss on clients of 3 regions and only delay on servers from 1 region. And the third scenario flips this ratio and applies moderate amounts of message delay, but relatively high message loss rates on clients and only message loss on servers, no message delay in the specific regions. We are interested in 3 particular metrics. So first of all, traffic volume, how much volume is necessary to be sent by clients and servers in order to achieve the objective. How do their computational memory load looks like? So we use this to determine resource demands of these services. And then maybe most importantly, end-to-end message latencies. And we use this as a user perspective to determine how fault tolerant a system is. And the results of our evaluation are available publicly on GitHub. I will not go into detail of the resource demands that we also evaluate. Please, I'm referring to the paper. If you're interested, please read the paper on this. But we'll focus on the message transmission latencies here. So how long does it take for a message from the sender to the receiver? And we use this as kind of like a proxy to assess how fault tolerant a system is. And we have 2 figures here. On the left-hand side, you can see the cumulative distribution plots of these end-to-end message transmission latencies across 3 user bases. So those are the subplots. Top figure is 1,000 users, middle figure is 2,000 users, and lower figure is 3,000 users. And then for each of the systems, so Pang, FTMX, and Vuvuzela in their respective colors, right? Pang being golden, yellow, FTMX in green, and Vuvuzela in blue. And for each of the 3 scenarios, right? So we see 9 scenarios here represented per user base size. And as we can see, the more we scale, so the more users we introduce, right? So from top to bottom, and then the more failures are introduced, and network failures are introduced into the various systems, the more the curves for end-to-end transmission latencies diverge from the baseline for the systems that do not have fault tolerance measures, right? So FTMX, as you can see here in the middle in green, all of those curves look more or less the same. But for Pang and Vuvuzela, we can see that either by scaling or by introducing relatively worst case network failures, we see that the curves start to diverge from the baseline. And this is also nicely expressed in first Wasserstein metrics that you can see on the right-hand side in the table. This computes the value of how much a failure scenario, so 2 or 3, diverges from the baseline scenario, so 1. And you can see that FTMX achieves significantly lower values than Vuvuzela and Pang here, which is nice because our measures work. So to conclude, our paper shows that the neglect of fault tolerance in ACS impairs users and potentially drives them to abandon the service for less private messengers. To this end, we explore simple fault tolerance measures in a proof of concept system called FTMX, and we evaluate FTMX against Vuvuzela and Pang in a planet-scale public cloud ACS testbed. And we find that FTMX maintains end-to-end latencies that are closest to the expectation under failures, while achieving good resource demands. And at the end, we would like to encourage system designers to make fault tolerance a design priority when designing ACS. These are our references, and now Future Leonard is probably very happy to take your questions. Thank you.